Hi, this video is going to talk about overclocking the Game Boy Color. So this is the inside of the Game Boy Color, the motherboard, the ribbon cable to the LCD, the cartridge slot, the battery case. This is the DC power input, and the headphone jack is gone. I'll get to that in a second. So right here on the inside, you can see I've soldered some wires to it, and it runs to the new crystal oscillator. So the crystal oscillator just sits on top of here, and if you can, I got some pliers in there and just kind of wiggled it around until it snapped off. Once it snaps off, there's two connecting points underneath these 2 points. So I soldered wire to each point, and then soldered each point to the new crystal oscillator. On this one, I'm using 24, I believe. It comes stock with a an 8 megahertz crystal. I think this one, let's see, yeah, this one is 20 megahertz. So it's about 2.5 times, 3 times faster than the original one. So I also have a front light mod on this. I'm doing a little work on this one right now because the switch broke, but something happened when I put the crystal oscillator in that made the front light not work correctly. So my theory is, since the crystal oscillator makes the Game Boy run 3 times faster, my theory is that the crystal oscillator also makes the screen 3 times brighter. I could be totally wrong, but that's just my theory. And so what would happen is I'd turn on the Game Boy for a second, and it'd last for like 3 seconds. The screen would be really bright, and then it would just die, kill itself. And so what I had to do for the front light kit is I had to unsolder it from the 2 prongs that is normally soldered to back here, and I ended up soldering a wire to right here and right here, and so it goes before the motherboard. So back here, right here where people normally hook up their front light kits, the power goes through the motherboard and then comes back to here and sends power to that. But that's where it wouldn't work, so I had to go before the motherboard. And so I hooked it up to where the batteries hook up, basically. That's why all this tape's in here, because it was a little messy. This is my first complete build. And then what's going on over here is I put a new speaker in there. That I ended up taking out the speaker, the headphone jack, to put the switch in there. The switch, it just hangs out there. And so I had to do a bunch of testing. It took me a couple hours to figure out how this works. It was just trial and error, figure out how to bypass the headphone jack switch. So I soldered a couple connections in there, and then it made it so that the speaker would work, because once I took out the headphone jack, sound stopped coming through the board. Because I imagine it goes through the headphone jack and then goes into the speaker, and it creates a circuit, and that's how the speaker works. So I figured out a way to bypass that, soldered some wires together in there, and then connected the speaker. So yeah, I think that's about it. The crystal oscillator replacement, it's not too hard. It's tiny though. It's really tiny. If you get any solder up in here, you fry the board. I already did that. Not cool. And yeah, that's basically it. It's a little bit of work. Takes a little bit of parts. What you're gonna need: some wire, some solder, crystal oscillator, and a switch if you have a front light. If you don't want a front light or don't have a front light, you don't have to worry about that switch at all. But if you do, you have to hook the front light up with a crystal oscillator in to the battery prongs. So yeah, I think that's it. Not too bad, not too hard. yeah, it's definitely worth it. My Game Boy plays 3 times faster than the normal speed now, so yeah.